Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, my dear students. Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone is fine. We are entering into the fourth week of the semester. This is going to be the second week of online lectures. And in this journey of learning so far, we have talked about human resource management, in which we have discussed the concept, its models, its framework, and in educational context. Now we are switching over to the next concept, that is the concept of demand and supply in an organization for human resources. So in this lecture we are going to discuss organizational demand and supply for human resources. This topic is very important in the context of demand and supply. When things are more, their demand is less, and when things are low, their demand is on high and their supply is on the low aspect. Today we are going to see that what organizational demands are for supply of human resources. Organizational demand and supply for human resources, it is the planning function which involves defining an organization's goal, establishing a strategy for achieving those goals, and developing a comprehensive set of plans to integrate and coordinate activities. Planning activities can be complex or simple, implicit or explicit, impersonal or personal. For example, a human resource manager forecasting demand for the firm's human resources may rely on complex econometric models or causal conversation with human resource personnel in the field. Demand forecasting is a quantitative aspect of human resource planning. It is the process of estimating the future requirements of human resources of all kinds and types of the organization. Human resource planning is defined as a process which includes forecasting, developing, and controlling, by which an organization ensures that it has the right number of people and the right kind of people at the right place at the right time, doing work for which they are economically most useful. Human resource planning is a very important aspect in any organization because all the organization depends on human resource. So HR planning is said to consist of three clear steps. The first of these steps is forecasting future people needs. That is called demand forecasting. How many people are required in future? Then comes the forecasting the future availability of people, supply forecasting. And the third thing is, once you have prepared the demand forecasting and the supply forecasting, then you need a plan to match this supply and demand in any organization. So if you go to the market, you want to buy something, what you will see is that how many things are available. If things are available in excess, then you can say the demand is less and supply is more. That's why things are more in the market. On the other hand, when you look for things and things are not available, so what will happen? The demand is there, but the supply is not there. That's why the price is more than the normal. Now the holy month of Ramadan has started, and you can see the price hike because of this supply and demand concept. For any organization, we have different levels of plans at the company level, at the departmental level, and at the job level. So what you have to do is there's going to be an activity for you that you have to prepare plans for all these three levels: at the company level plan, departmental level plan, and job level plan. So what you have to do is you have to give an example of each of the plans relating to any one organization you are familiar with. Maybe your own university, you can see the division of education. Now inside a university, university of education, you have division of education, and then you have this department, your own department. And now what you have to do is you have to prepare this, and you have to complete it before the next class. So there are certain factors which are there to affect human resource demands. These factors not only disturb, rather, in the light of these factors, we plan different activities. These are employment trends, replacement needs due to retirement, death, resignation, termination, improvement in productivity, expansion of the organization. Looking at the first, you can see that employment trend in the organization for at least last 5 years to be traced to determine the future needs. Organization has to find out the replacement needs due to retirement. The old age people retire, there may be deaths, some resignations coming because they may have a better opportunity, and then of course time comes when organizations have this termination processes are going on. So all these types of replacement opportunities occur, and you have to look at for creating, and you have to look at for the demands. Then is improvement in productivity. It's another factor. To improve any productivity, organization needs better employees with skills and potential. With passage of time, you need more educated, more skilled, and more potential oriented people. So productivity leads to growth but depends on the demands for the product of the enterprise in the market. Before you go for forecasting, you have to think about certain aspects, because higher demands may lead to more employment of skilled personnel, and expansion of the organization leads to hiring of more skilled person. The base of human resource forecast is the annual budget. Manufacturing plant depends upon the budget. Expansion and production leads to more hiring of skill and technology. So before you go for forecasting, what always decide on, these are the few things which are very important before forecasting. So you have to do these things, and then you are ready to go for forecasting. So the first thing is the approach of how the estimations are to be based: qualitative or quantitative. I hope everyone knows the difference between a qualitative aspect and a quantitative aspect. So basic factors to be considered are whether we are projecting waste or labor cost or absenteeism or labor turnover. These are the things which are very important in any decision of the management. They are looking for these things. Then the frequency of the forecasting exercise. How many times you are going to do it? The frequency. That is dealing with the rate of changes and matching estimations. And the important one is the techniques to be adopted. This depends on the approach adopted, such as workload analysis, work study analysis, job analysis. So these are different techniques which are adopted in forecasting demands. So on the next slide, we are seeing methods of demand forecasting, and you can see 1, 2, and 3 major um, methods of demand forecasting. The first one is executive or managerial judgment. Executive or managerial judgment method is the most suitable for smaller enterprises because they do not afford to have work study technique. Under this method, the executive sit together and determine the future manpower requirements of the enterprise and submit the proposal to the top management for approval. Now, this approach is known as the bottom-up approach because it is coming from the bottom side of the organization. Means executives sit together and determines the future manpower needs. On the other hand, there is another approach which is known as top-down approach. Now here the members of the top management sit together and determine the needs that is coming from the top management to the HR managers to perform the activity of judgment that what they are going to do in future as far as the demand is concerned. The next thing is workload forecast. It is also known as workload analysis. On the one hand you have the work, and on the other hand you have its load. It is stock of workload and the continuity of operations are determined. Under this method, the stock of workload and the continuity of operations are determined. Accordingly, the labor requirement is determined. The workload becomes the base for workforce analysis for the forthcoming years. Man hours required for each unit is calculated and then number of required employees is calculated. This method is also known as work study technique. How many working capacity of each employee is calculated in terms of man hours, and man hours required for each unit is calculated and then number of required employees calculated. There are different techniques, the statistical techniques which are applied in calculating demand forecasting. The names are here. Trend analysis, you can see the trend which is coming from the previous years, that what type of trend they will be following in the future. And then is the ratio analysis, and then statistical analysis known as regression analysis for the calculation of demand forecasting. So forecasting human resource requirement, that is another aspect which you have to think on while you are doing the forecast. Several techniques of forecasting human resource requirement and availability are currently being used by organizations. Zero-based forecasting, bottom-up approach, use of mathematical models and simulations. These are the requirements forecasts or an estimate of the numbers and kinds of employees the organization will need at future dates in order to realize its goals. Several techniques of forecasting human resource requirements and availability are currently being used by the organization. As you have seen the name, the very first one is zero-based forecasting. This method this method uses the organization's current level of employment as the starting point for determining future staffing needs. The key to zero-based forecasting is a thorough analysis of human resource needs. The next is bottom-up approach, a forecasting method in which each successive level of the organization, starting from the lower or rather lowest, and forecast its employee requirements in order to ultimately provide an aggregate forecast of employment needs. While in mathematical models one can assist in forecasting HR requirements, the relationship between sales demand and the number of employees needed is a positive one. Simulation is a technique for experimenting with a real-world situation through a mathematical model representing that situation. You know that a model is basically an abstraction of the real world. So what you do is that you take it as an example from the real life and then you perform it inside so that you can do it. Now the second part of this presentation or lecture is supply forecasting. We have talked about demands. Now we are going towards supply. So once the organization forecasts its future requirements for employees, it then goes on to the next search, that is from where it can fulfill its requirements. Supply forecasting means to make an estimation of supply of human resources, taking into consideration the analysis of current human resources inventory and future availability. So what you do is that you go for the supply means from where you will be getting or fulfillment of those demands which you have forecasted so far in your organization. So supply analysis is another aspect which has to be very carefully met. Supply analysis thus involves planning for procurement, who, from where, how and when of recruitment will be made. It scans the internal and external environment for the best fit candidates for the position in question. Whenever there is an opportunity, what organization is looking for, it looks inside the organization and tries to fill that particular capacity post from the organization people from within the organization. But at times there is no suitable candidate available in the organization, so then organization looks for external sources. Thus there are two sources of supply, internal and external. So we will discuss internal sources. The most popular approach to be followed by all managers is to look within the organization among its cadre first. So whenever there is an opportunity comes, what the managers do, they look inside the organization and they want that there may be a suitable person available in the organization. So until and unless the opening is not related to immensely diversified field of which the existing workforce might not possess requisite skills and the cost of training may be working out to be high, it is easier to go for an internal source for recruitment. For that particular purpose, HR managers in an organization have a profile of employees in terms of age, gender, education, training experiences, job level, past performance, and future potential is continuously maintained for use whenever required. Thus, if the requirements in terms of growth, diversification, internal movements of employees, transfer, promotion, retirements, etc., are determined in advance, then the data can be very useful because it is cost saving in many ways. You utilize what is already available to the organization. But at times there is no one in the organization, so you go for external resources. So far we have talked about internal sources. Now we are going to look about what do we mean by the external source. So here is, it is only when the cost of procuring the labor from internal sources is more and also the present staff cannot be spared for the future assignment, the company can refer to the external market. So what happens that there is an opportunity and organization is looking for its employees inside the organization, but there is a problem. If they will replace someone from the current position, there may be a space for a future employee. But then the organization has to train. They have to develop that to that potential so that it become a good replacement. So for that purpose, organizations go for an external source in the market. For this, they need to keep themselves updated regularly on what is available now, what will be available later. Thus, HR planners need to keep themselves abreast of the labor market conditions, such as local employment, trends of relevant categories of employment, competition for such skills, availability of part-time labor, migration trends of labor, etc. So when we look on a comprehensive supply forecast and analysis, so what we see is that the skill-based potential, trainability and current and potential productivity level of the existing force which is present in the work of any organization. You look for the skill, the potential, productivity level of the existing workforce, because these are the three things which are very important to train the organization persons. The structure of existing workforce in terms of age distribution, how many people you have in the age of young workers, in the middle age, and then in the age of retirement. So you go for the age distribution level, then you look for their skills, how many skills they have, then how many hours of work they can do, and then the rate of pay and so on. So these are very important aspects of any organization. The possible changes in the productivity, size and structure of the workforce due to the resignation and retirements, promotions and transfers, absenteeism and other external forces, economic and culture, which may include such changes. Now, there are certain very possible changes taking place in the productivity of an organization. The first and the foremost thing is its size and structure of the workforce. There may be some resignations coming, there may be some retirements, promotions, transfers, there may be absenteeism in the, it's a trend which is taking place in employees. So all these aspects are very important when someone is working on the supply demand analysis. Availability of the relevant skills in the external labor market for present and future use. You may think that you have some people who are skillful present now, but when that time comes in future they may not be available. Like you people sitting in the class, you are a potential candidate for the future employment, but if you do not prepare yourself for those particular aspects, you may not be able to get those available seats. So here is an activity for you. Now, what you have to do is you have to think to and list out what you have to think. You have to think as many occupations as you can that are currently in short supply in the job marketplace, what we can see is occupations, and then in short supply in the job marketplace, and that's why they are demands. So you have to think about these three things. You have to think of as many occupations as you can that are currently in short supply in the job marketplace. So that's why they have great demand. You think about those professions or occupations which are available. Then you have to quick analysis. You have to do a quick analysis of why are they in demand. The question comes here. And the third thing is you have to list out what? List out occupations which are the supply is greater than the demand. Now the supply is greater than the demand, and find the reasons behind the low demand. You have to locate. In the first you have to what you have to do is in the first you are looking for occupations that are in short supply. They are not available. That's why wherever they are available or people look for those, so they demand is on the rise. Demand is on the rise. Then you have to do quick analysis of why they are in demand, because of their importance or whatever comes in your mind. And then what you have to do is the demand is on the low level. So with this we are in the process of ending of this lecture, but before I conclude these things, I have a short video for you people. Kindly watch it out so that you can quickly clear your concepts whatever we have discussed so far. I hope you will have a better understanding in the end about these aspects. Thank you very much. Look, I'll see you in future.